Most men would want to be more confident. Most men would want to put on more muscle and be leaner. Do you understand what you are getting into with this? Because from a surface level standpoint, testosterone is a very easy thing to sell or be sold to men because they want to have more of the things that they associate as a byproduct of more testosterone. I still don't recommend people trial TRT. I think it's a commitment that people should make. I want to talk about a bit of a different angle today on this because I was recently going through all of my previous lectures that I'd done between 2019 up until about 2023. And I've actually re-recorded them for a series on my YouTube channel. I did about 10 hours of recording and revisiting all these topics and going into them in more depth with better production quality so that people can get the information that I've been putting out for the last few years in a more concise format that's easier to consume. And it was interesting to go back and kind of revisit these things, especially things that I had different opinions on or more experience in after working with thousands of guys over the last couple of years, in addition to the thousands of men that I'd worked with previously. And the video that I wanted to make today, which I think will provide the most value for people, is a one-sided conversation that I would have with someone who is considering starting TRT. And it's a one-sided conversation because you're not here. So it's just me talking. But I think this is a really important point, and I'm aware that a lot of the content that I make focuses on providing a solution because I am a very solution-oriented person. And the best way that I can provide value is educating about how to solve a problem or prevent a problem. But I think it's also worth having a bit more of a discussion and conversation around the problem itself and how to navigate this kind of circumstance. So these are the kind of questions that I would pose to someone to contemplate, reflect on, and come up with an answer themselves before starting TRT, to make sure that you can avoid the problems that I see coming up a dozen plus times a week, maybe significantly more than that, depending on the week, depending on how things are going. So the first thing that I would pose to someone is, do you understand what you are getting into with this? Because from a surface level standpoint, testosterone is a very easy thing to sell or be sold to men. All men, well, most men, I would hope, would want to have more testosterone because they want to have more of the things that they associate as a byproduct of more testosterone. And that can be different things to different people based on their perception, because this comes down to expectations, not the actual reality of the treatment. So most men would want to be more confident. Most men would want to put on more muscle and be leaner. These are the things that they perceive testosterone will do for them. Most men want to have healthier and higher sexual function. Most men would want to be able to feel more confident and feel more courageous and feel more resilient to stress. Most men would want to have more androgenic, meaning masculinized, physical features. So when men have these expectations and associations of these things coming as a byproduct of increasing their testosterone via testosterone replacement therapy, it's a pretty easy thing to sell, and it's a pretty easy thing to be sold. But the important thing to look at here, firstly, is that testosterone is shutting down your natural production. And this is a big commitment to make. It's not a reason not to do it if you need it. It's a reason not to do it if you don't need it. The analogy I've used for a while with this is that let's say that you own and operate a box factory and it's got like the production line of boxes and stuff. I don't know that much about box factories, so if anyone runs a box factory, maybe you can enlighten me about how my analogy could be improved. But let's say that someone on the production line is the weak link of the team and they are slowing down production, or maybe they are doing a bad job, and as a result, the area of production that they are responsible for is causing a lot of problematic boxes being created. And anyone who runs a business or who has worked in a business or a supply chain or anything like this knows that you are limited by your weakest link. There's the saying that you're only as strong as your weakest link. This is very true. So in this scenario, the best thing that you could do as a manager and operator is to upskill the person who is doing a bad job. The reason why that is the best option is that it is the least invasive. It's going to create the least amount of work for you long term so that you can be efficient and get the outcome that you're ultimately trying to achieve. So this is both efficient and effective. So in this scenario, if we're thinking about this person in the box factory as your testicles, and what they are doing is responsible for making testosterone, which is really damn important. I'm trying not to swear. Really damn important in this factory, which is your body. Ultimately, we would want them to be able to do that job efficiently and effectively. So ultimately, what everyone should want is to have the outcomes of testosterone replacement therapy without needing testosterone replacement therapy. That is always ideal. Now, as someone ages, this is inevitably going to get to the point that you need TRT, because over time, this guy's going to retire and he's going to slow down his production before retirement, and then he's going to retire. So if we're looking at age-related hormone decline, you can't upskill someone who is too old to do the job. And this is what happens with the gonads. But for younger people who are looking at treatment, you want to see if there is something that you can resolve, something that you can stop doing that you shouldn't be doing, something that you can start doing that you should be doing, to see if you can bring that back online and to bring that up to where it should be. And this is the thing that should be explored. So that would be my first question is, can you get the outcomes of TRT without needing TRT? And a lot of the time, this individual doesn't need testosterone replacement therapy. They need a personal trainer. They need someone to guide them with diet and exercise and hold them accountable to that. Or they need to stop binge drinking every weekend. Or they need a set bedtime. Or they need to stop abusing stimulants. There can be a lot of things that someone needs to change that can be causing these problems. Maybe they need to apply exercise and diet and proper sleep and proper hydration for 6 to 12 months to actually get to a healthy lean body fat percentage. So a good practitioner and provider, when you consult them and say, hey, do I need TRT? They should be able to look at your blood work and look at your lifestyle and look at what's going on. And this is something that I've been doing professionally for a long time, to tell someone and say, yeah, look, mate, you need TRT. Like this is, the LH and FSH is not suppressed, or maybe they're elevated because the testicles aren't working, or the small things you're doing that are suboptimal are probably secondary to the fact that the low testosterone is present, and this is probably not something that you can resolve. Or they'll come in with such suppressed luteinizing hormone levels and so many red flags in their lifestyle, and maybe they've clearly got a liver issue or a thyroid issue. And a good provider, a good health coach, a good doctor, a good nurse practitioner will have this conversation with you to say, no, you don't need TRT. What you need is this. And hopefully they have allied practitioners in their network that they can send you to and they can refer you to. This is what we want to happen. Now, most clinics will not do this. They'll see that your number's low enough to be able to prescribe you testosterone. They won't even look at all that other stuff. They'll put you on treatment. And if you have side effects, they're not going to care because they get paid anyway. This is why I have my own clinic in Australia. This is why I have my own clinic in Eastern Europe. This is why I partner with Victory Men's Health. And on my website, under my TRT FAQ, if you download that, there's like a pop-up for a free download. Scroll to the end of it. One of the big FAQs is which providers are good. There is a whole list of providers there that I endorse, and I don't have any financial relationship with. They're just people who are the best at what they do. There are more providers than listed on there that I have become aware of since writing that. I will update it shortly. So if someone's not on there, it doesn't mean that I think they're bad. But the ones on there, I can say that I know are good. So that's number one. Number two is the nature of this being a lifelong commitment. Now, one thing that I will say that's interesting is that through working with my clinic in Australia, I've seen a lot of men discontinue TRT. Now, for people on YouTube who are learning about this and spending their spare time, educating themselves or people who consult with me and they've read my books, or people who are into this, they're not the kind of guys who are just going to let their testosterone run out. They're going to maintain their supply of treatment because that's really important. When you shut down your natural production, you need to continue administering this. So if you fire the guy from the box factory, you now have to do his job. And if you don't do his job, you're going to be worse off because he's gone. So there is a degree of responsibility here that you have to uphold with this. But it's no different than something like SSRI antidepressants, which deliver horrific side effects and very poor outcomes. If you run out of Zoloft and you've been taking Zoloft for the last 10 years, you're going to have a real bad time. I would argue that TRT wouldn't even be as bad as that, but there is a degree of responsibility to maintain the treatment. But the point I'm making is, I've seen a lot of guys just run out of testosterone, come back 6 months later and be like, I don't feel as good as when I was taking it. And I'm like, well, yeah, there's a reason for that. But one thing that I have noted, though, is that when men are using TRT as opposed to anabolic steroids, which absolutely will shut down and damage the natural production in supraphysiological doses, especially from what I've seen, either very, very high doses or the use of the 19-nor class of anabolic steroids, I don't really see the same level of damage to the endocrine system that people are afraid of. I still don't recommend people trial TRT. I think it's a commitment that people should make. But I will say that I've seen a lot of men discontinue treatment and their levels come back to pretty close to what they were before. And I would say that the reason for it maybe not quite being where it was before would be the time that's passed since. Multiple years, small amount of decline. So I'm throwing that in there as a caveat. But the most important thing to understand, if you want to do this right and you want to do this optimally, and if you've been listening to me ramble before, you will know that I'm a big fan of only doing this right, is once you start treatment, you have to continue the treatment. For people who've seen the Pringles ad, once you pop, you can't stop. You can stop, but you shouldn't. When it comes to TRT, at least, you should stop the Pringles. So TRT is something that once you start, you are firing the guy in the box factory and you are making the commitment to do his job for the rest of your life. Now, this is a great power, great responsibility kind of thing. So is it inconvenient compared to not having to administer TRT to have to administer TRT? Sure, absolutely. Having to do an injection every day or 3 times a week, or having to put transscrotal cream on your ball sack twice a day, that adds an extra thing that you have to do. But I would hope that everyone's showering every day, maybe twice a day. I would hope that everyone's brushing their teeth twice a day. There are things that you already have to do that also are cumbersome. And the return on investment for taking a tiny little needle, the size of a needle that diabetic little girls have to inject themselves with every day just to survive. If you can take this needle with testosterone and use it to deliver optimal androgen levels and all the benefits that come with that, either a daily injection ideally or 3 times a week, or even using a transscrotal cream like I mentioned before twice a day, the return on investment for the time and effort spent is massive. And I would argue that if you can't be bothered doing this, or if that administration protocol is a deal breaker, your symptoms can't be that bad. So that's the other thing, is there is a degree of responsibility to this. You are saying, I am going to take control. I'm going to hijack my endocrine system. I am going to do the role of this guy in the box factory for the rest of my life. And is that worth doing? Absolutely. But you have to continue to do that. And if you hijack your endocrine system and administer your dose infrequently, if you don't consistently do your injections or your cream applications, you could create a worse scenario than just having low testosterone. So you do have to make the commitment to be consistent with it. It's only a small thing, but I do see a lot of people struggle with that. And I wonder if the fact that they struggle with that also has something to do with the fact that they struggle with other aspects of keeping their life together. Discipline's important, but this is a very small commitment, but it's a commitment that you are making to consistently do on a lifelong basis. And if it wasn't for that, I think TRT would be a pretty quick, easy conversation. That's the big thing. It's the lifelong commitment. The next thing that I would pose to someone who's looking to start TRT. And I'm really big on this because my private consultations that I've done for the last 6 years, and I checked my Calendly the other day, I think it was just over 3,000 consultations I've done. If you've just started TRT, it is completely normal to feel overwhelmed and confused. There's a lot of new territory to cover, and there is a lot of conflicting information. I wrote TRT 101 so that you can have everything that you need to know in an instruction manual in one place that you can refer back to, that you can have all the questions answered before they even come up. TRT 101 is my best practice approach for TRT from start to finish, and it contains everything that you need to avoid all the challenges and pitfalls that I've seen come up in my clients over the last 5 years. You can check it out via the link below. Most of the issues that I see for people who've already started TRT come from poor practitioner management of the case. And usually it's a bad protocol, or they haven't done the right testing and they haven't been able to interpret test results properly to find something else that was going on that was complicating the situation. Because testosterone is connected to everything. Your endocrine system is interconnected with every system in the body. And for a lot of the systems, it acts kind of like a marionette, which is a puppet master. So it impacts a lot of stuff downstream. But because you are taking an exogenous hormone and you are throwing your body out of its natural feedback loops, you are also now impacting all these other systems as well. So if these other systems are problematic, you may have side effects from the testosterone therapy that's not because the protocol's wrong, it's because something else is wrong that's creating a problem with the testosterone. So my recommendation, just from seeing how this has played out and seeing the work that has to go into solving the issue, is that a good practitioner and provider will prevent this stuff from happening in the first place. And you will end up saving money as well as time and effort and just not feeling well, not getting what you're hoping to get by just going to the best provider that you can go to in the first place. You know, if you go to McDonald's and you expect a, Michelin star filet mignon, you're going to be disappointed. But at McDonald's, you're going to get what you pay for. If you want to pay, I don't know how much McDonald's is these days, but you're going to get what you pay for. And the analogy that I often use here is surgery. If you need brain surgery, you're probably not going to go onto Google and just find the cheapest brain surgeon to do the surgery. I would hope that you wouldn't. What you'd probably do is find the best surgeon that is available to you within your budget and your area. Now, all those surgeons use the same scalpels. Most of those surgeons would probably follow a similar procedure, but there is a skill aspect to it. And when it comes to TRT, most providers, you're going to get the same testosterone. You're going to get at least a similar product that is virtually the same. But what's different is the skill of the provider who is overseeing this. And the skill of the provider is what's going to prevent you potentially having issues and problems that eventually you're going to have to go to the better provider to fix. And it is much more efficient and cost effective to get it done right properly. And I understand the economy is the way that it is. I understand all this stuff. My undergrad was in marketing. I understand business very well. I understand consumer psychology. But I know for a fact, as someone who owns a car, a lot of people own a car. When I first got my car, didn't know anything about cars. I just went to the cheapest mechanic, had it serviced, it didn't fix the issue. I went back to the same mechanic, didn't fix the issue. And eventually I had to find a good mechanic who I could actually trust to solve the issues created by the first mechanic. Now I know that because I went through that process. And I wish I'd listened to someone beforehand who could have said, hey, just go to the good mechanic in the first place and prevent this issue from happening. This is your body, not your car. You can get a new car, can't get a new body. TRT is kind of like doing ongoing surgery on yourself forever. So you really want to make sure that whoever's doing this knows what they're doing. Otherwise, for some guys who are a very straightforward case, all you need to do is just put the testosterone in the right dose at the right frequency and cool. And I completely understand there are guys out there who just find a cheap clinic, they get their testosterone prescribed like a mill a week, they come onto YouTube videos like mine or read my books, they split their dose up, they get it right, and it works for them. I'm really happy about that. I don't have a problem with that at all. And a lot of the time, these guys are already super healthy. They don't have any other stuff going on, and they can do that. And I'm glad that that exists as an option for people. But if you're starting treatment and you want to make sure that there are no risks of poor provider practices, maybe your health's not optimal, maybe you've got some additional questions, maybe you don't want to spend all this time managing your own stuff and you want someone who can just nail it for you, go to the best provider that you can. If all my clients that I'd ever seen over the last 6 years had just gone to a good provider, I wouldn't have any business. So please go to a good provider. That's the next thing. Go to the best person that you can find to do this for you, and you will thank me in the long run. The next thing that I would talk to someone about who's wanting to start TRT is to make sure that when you speak to said provider, that you disclose everything. And what I mean by everything is they should be asking for this stuff. If they're not asking for this stuff, that's a red flag. Find someone better. But you need to disclose every aspect of your health. You need to be honest about if you've used steroids before, if you've used steroids recently, if you take recreational drugs, how many standard drinks do you drink per week? Do you take prescription medication? Have you previously taken prescription medication? Have you had major surgeries? How much do you exercise? What do you actually eat? Don't lie about it. How much do you actually exercise? Not what is the goal that you don't really adhere to. What does your actual exercise routine look like? All of this stuff is so important for assessing you on an individual basis so that your blood work makes sense. The information that you provide about yourself is what gives the blood work context. And this is fundamentally important because when people don't disclose key information, and a lot of the time the patients don't realize what the key information is, the providers have to ask the right questions. But if you withhold information that is critical to your treatment, you're the one who's going to suffer. So you have to make sure that you disclose everything honestly and openly so that the provider knows exactly what's going on, especially stuff that maybe you're not proud of, maybe you're in the process of fixing. And that's totally fine. A good provider will work with you and the treatment if it's needed or if it's something that you really want to do to be able to get you the result that you're looking for. The next thing I would be looking at is how you're going to approach the administration of testosterone. Now, a good provider should be educating you on this, but I think it's important to have some degree of foundational knowledge on the subject so that you can have an informed conversation, rather than going on Dr. Google or, God forbid, Reddit or Facebook groups to get answers to these questions. So when it comes to injecting testosterone, the more often you inject it, the better. Daily injections are the gold standard because it keeps everything super stable. If anyone disagrees, please come on my YouTube channel or the TRT and Hormone Optimization channel and we can debate it because you are wrong. Daily injections with cypionate and enanthate is the best treatment option. And if you are coming into this and saying, I want the best outcome possible, start with doing daily injections. Yes, it's inconvenient, sure, but you get used to it. I'd rather do a daily injection than floss my teeth. I still do both. It's not that inconvenient. I recommend 29 gauge needles. 29 gauge needles for me are the sweet spot to do a daily injection. You can do a 27 gauge, sure, but it gets old. Now, for people who are using anabolic steroids, they'll probably need to use a 27 gauge because of the amount of oil that they're pushing in. But if you're pushing in less than 0.2 of a mil of oil a day, you don't need a 27 gauge needle. You can do it with a 29. And the comfort factor over time makes a big difference. A 29 gauge, I'd rather do a daily injection with a 29 gauge needle than a once a week glute injection with a 25. 100%. You should also be looking at transscrotal cream, which is something that Victory Men's Health offer. They've done a lot educating on this. I've done a lot educating on this, especially if your health is not 100%. There are less side effects from cream, but the cream has to be done right. The commercial preparations for topical testosterone give topicals a bad name. A compounded 20% cream twice a day in a HRT base, a liposomal base, a Versa base, or an Atrivas base. I prefer HRT or liposomal personally. Because of how it metabolizes, it causes less problems in people with metabolic or liver issues. So this should be something that a provider can pose to you as an option to say, you might not want to do cream in terms of the inconvenience of it. I would argue that it's equally inconvenient to injections. I think it's splitting hairs. But if the outcomes are going to be drastically different, especially for the short-term period while you're getting your health together, it's something that people should consider. And it's something a provider should be able to have that conversation about. The last thing that I would be posing to people, there's 2 more points, and I don't want this to go on for too long, but there are 2 more points that I think are important. Point number 1 is that you need to comply with regular blood work. And I don't think this is a bad thing. I think that for anyone who's wanting to look after their health long term, getting a blood test every 6 months and having a comprehensive overview of your health to pick up things before they become a real problem is fantastic. Because that way you can get objective feedback to see, oh, I'm not getting away with my diet being a little bit off. Oh, I'm not getting away with drinking a few drinks a week. I'm not getting away with the sleep apnea that I don't want to wear a CPAP for, but maybe I do need. All of these things can be very helpful to see around the corner for if you don't fix the thing that maybe you're trying to get away with, or something may pop up in your blood work and gradually over time it can become apparent there's an issue. And you can catch this issue and treat it before it becomes a problem. But you have to be prepared to have regular long-term compliance with making sure your hormone replacement therapy is optimal and dialed in. That's very important. The last point that I'll bring up, and I beat this point to death before. I've done hours of lectures on this point. I've spoken live at events on this point. I wouldn't go as far to say I've pioneered this point. I actually learned the importance of this point from my friend Jay Campbell, probably back in 2016, 2017, where he proposed that the root cause of most side effects on TRT are metabolic and inflammatory in nature. Outside of poor injection protocols, this is 100% true. So if you are going to go on TRT, and if you're wanting to have the optimal levels that a male should have of testosterone, if that's what you want, you have to manage the responsibilities that come with that. And what that means, whether you like it or not, because this is the reality of it, and there's no biohack or pill or supplement or anything that can fix this outside of doing the work. If there was, I'd tell you about it. There are other people on YouTube, I'm sure, who say that there are. They're also wrong. If you are not living in a way that you would be making those levels naturally, if you could, the gap between the levels that you would be making and the level that you are administering, this region, this gap, is the gap that side effects occur in. This is side effect city between these 2 points. So if you are taking the testosterone levels of a healthy athlete and you are living like an absolute degenerate, you are going to have side effects. You are. You don't need to understand exactly what the mechanisms are. You can if you want. I've done, as I said, hours of lectures on this, and you can watch those on my YouTube channel if you want. But if you are not living in a way that you are looking after yourself and looking after your health, you will have side effects on treatment because that level of testosterone is not supposed to be there. You've created a disconnect. You are working against your body. You have to work with your body. So if you want to have optimal testosterone levels, if you think and say, hey, now that I'm injecting the testosterone, I don't have to do the stuff that I would have to do to produce these levels naturally. I can now stay up late, party on the weekends, and do some drugs and eat like garbage and all this stuff because I've got my testosterone covered. If you think that that is going to work out and you're going to have your expectations met, you are in for a rough reality pill being swallowed here, because this is not how it works. Wish it was. My job would be easier. It's not. So you have to fix your daily habits to actually be healthy if you want to tolerate and benefit from healthy testosterone levels. And the main thing is being at a lean, healthy body fat percentage, not drinking alcohol, being well hydrated, eating nutrient-dense food, and not having things going on like sleep apnea, liver disease, hypothyroidism, all these other things that can throw a real spanner in the works for the treatment. Those things have to be addressed. So those are the things that I would be sitting down with someone to have a conversation about before starting TRT. And I think that everyone needs to at least reflect on those points before pulling the trigger. So hope that helped you with your decision to potentially start TRT. And I will see you all on the next one. What is testosterone optimization therapy? This is optimizing testosterone levels rather than simply just replacing them. The provider will need to intrinsically understand how testosterone works and how the human body works. So when you follow this process of optimizing testosterone gradually, it allows the patient to acclimatize